Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our concluding time together for the open space initiatives related to 20,000 voices, exploring issues of community, equity, and diversity. For those that have not had the opportunity to be with us for the full day, my name is Melissa Boyd Colvin. I am a staff member here at the university. I serve as the assistant director for the Center for Student Leadership Development and have had the pleasure of working with the Community Equity and Diversity Branding Committee and the individuals responsible for putting forward this event today. As you can see, looking around the room, this has been a productive day. So congratulations to all of you who engaged in the process. I know folks were nervous as they thought about using this approach, open space technology. For those who are less familiar, there's a quote behind me that talks a little bit about what it is, this process of bringing individuals together to dialogue along and about critical issues that require some sense of urgency, passion, and responsibility on the part of those who choose to engage, and ultimately action. And that's the time of day that we have come to talk about how we might look at some priorities, look through all of this content in depth, and select some key priorities that will be forwarded to those working in community, equity, and diversity, and others who are designated to move these items forward, and all of you who might choose to engage in that process. So looking a little bit about this moment of choice that we are facing, and that is really what it is. As we look at all of the items on this wall, we will ask individual conveners in just a moment to come forward, come to the center of our circle, our open space, very briefly reintroduce themselves to this room and what their topic was so folks can see it and hear it, ask questions later on before we leave this space if they wish, and sign up for action, and I'll talk about that before we leave if you wish on particular topics. And in doing so, they will briefly share, no more than 2 minutes. Let me talk about that part of it, which you'll see behind me. We talk about asking you in about 2 minutes to just share the highlights of the content of those sessions so that we can, again, all hear it and be prepared to vote. Let me talk about voting, because some of you have already started that, which is fantastic. This is an engaging, empowering process, and therefore everyone is here right now. There is a set of adhesive dots on your table. Some have already taken a bunch. There are extras up on the stage, and/or we will get those for you by the time we leave today, so you can engage in the vote if you wish. You have 6 adhesive dots, which means you may vote for 6 action items. And what that means is we are asking you to place your adhesive dot next to the area on each of these posters where you see it in brackets, indicating the action items that came out of these sessions. Please put it as close to the designated action items as possible so it's clear which ones you are voting for. The only rule is you may not put all 6 of your items on the same action item. So please spread the wealth if you wish. So we will do that in a couple moments. In order to have you be prepared, I'm going to start and ask folks to come forward. Convergers starting and conveners starting with this morning's session to come forward. And we can simply go in order of how it's hung on the wall, if that makes sense for folks to know when they're coming up, to say who they are, again, what their session was, and share with us what your action items are. You may give a round of applause if so inspired by the amazingness of the action item, and then we will lead to doing some reflection, community taking of action, and wrapping up for next steps and words of wisdom that will be shared with us by the end of the day. So I welcome the first convener.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Fonsbarrows. I work over in the College of the Environment and Life Sciences, and I'm the coordinator of student diversity initiatives over there. And I convened my session this morning, and the title of it was Collaboration of Identity-Specific Centers/Resources. And so, we had a great session. We had great conversation. But really it focused on there are so many resources that are on this campus, and we operate in silos a lot of times. And some of our students, especially students that are just coming to campus, don't know where to go for certain things. I do feel like we do communicate it through URI 101 and, through First Night, and there's so many things, but it's overwhelming. So what we ended up for action items were the things that I thought stood out the most, which were to research the support of staff in different offices to identify all the data needed to create a large-scale kind of resource. So one of the suggestions was having a button right on our URI website that says Ask URI. And I understand there's other colleges that have something like that. I'm not going to say names. But you can click on it, and you can ask a question, you can do a search, and it brings up your resources really, really easily. So that was one of the things that we'd like to see established here at URI. The other thing is creation of a centralized resource for students, using students' feedback to aid in the design, and get it online to be accessible and searchable, like I said. So in other words, having it in many different places. So at the resource, so if you go to, say, the counseling center, they have that publication of resources. If you go to the website, it's the same. If you go to the Multicultural Center, it's the same. So making sure that there's a commonality of resources that we can all take advantage of and communicate to other students. And then the last thing was, we've got commuter students, transfer students, a lot of different students, having a common meeting time for students during the day, Monday through Thursday. Because there are some students that can't be on campus in the evening. There are some students that just don't have the time to be here in the evening because they got to go to work. There's a lot of you out there that work. I found out a percentage, and it was crazy. So, it was just about making sure that you know all the resources and making sure that we are really, really clear about where to go and what to do. So that's ours. Thank you.
I'm David Hayes. I'm a lot taller than most people in this room. Our group was called White Like Me, Undoing Whiteness and Doing Racial Justice on Campus. We had a group of 25 or so people. It was a really nice combination of undergraduate students and some faculty and staff members. We had a really nice dialogue. A lot of really interesting questions came up when we got past the idea that of all the white people in the room, and virtually everybody in the room, most of the people in the room were white, we couldn't really define whiteness very well. And we admitted to one another that we don't think about it very often. It's just something we kind of take for granted. It's largely invisible to us. So as we went through this conversation, the students especially raised a lot of really good questions. And a lot of those questions made me think, boy, we could talk about this for a really long time. In fact, I think we could have an entire class organized around talking like this, and that's one of the objectives that we get to here. We identified 3 actionable items. The first was that we need to engage faculty in a professional development process that will enable them to teach more inclusively. Now, when you go look at our board, you're going to see that we've struck that item and asked you to refer to the session on inclusive teaching, where the same item is listed. So in order to collect all the votes in one place and make sure that we pass this item, you can move over to that board and vote for it there, and don't split the vote by voting for it on our board. The second item, and you can't go to our board and vote for this one, is we need to create spaces where white people can come together with one another and white people can come together with people of color to talk about whiteness as an aspect of a discussion about race. All of the white people in the room agreed that when we white people tend to talk about race, we tend to talk about people other than white people. When we think about race, we tend to think about people other than white people. So to come together and talk about whiteness as part of this whole diversity idea. The third actionable item was for white people to do their homework, to understand that the history that we have been taught, the history that all of us who have been taught who went to school in this country, is a specific version of history, and it doesn't really touch on the impact of being white in our history and our society. So several students said, I need to learn about this. They said, I need to go study this history over again. So a space where we can study the history and the impact of white people and ask ourselves, as white people especially, ask ourselves the question, how did I get to be a white person? And what does it mean to be a white person in today's society, and what has it meant to be a white person historically? So, if you vote for the white history piece, we can then advocate for the whiteness class. Okay, so white's right over there on that door. Vote for whiteness. No, wait. Vote for justice.
Next convener.
Hello, my name is Bob Samuels. The group that I convened was called Diversity Burnout. I'm tired, but the work's not done. The people there, we had very good conversation talking about the different ways in which we felt burned out. We felt that the same people were showing up at the same events, and usually the people that didn't need to be there. And so that was something that a number of types of frustrations were expressed. Then we were talking about actionable steps and ways of dealing with burnout and that feeling of, you're pushing a glacier. And some of the items that we came up with were doing things both in a big way or in a pocket-sized way. And in either case, we're talking about intentional action, making a decision to do something. This was connected very much with some of the civility efforts that are being done on campus. We also talked about us taking some responsibility for changing the campus culture and not just sort of expect or wait for it to happen, that we need to start small and then it would expand. And so I guess the action steps, two of the action steps that we have listed on our board was first taking stock individually and creating a space where we look at our own sense of inclusiveness and behaviors that we do to enhance and improve that. And another action step that we listed was talking about partnerships, because one of the primary aspects of burnout was a sense of isolation and that you were the only one doing it. And so we talked in a number of ways in which how having someone else doing it with you, having someone you can hand it off to, like a relay race, was another way of saying, okay, I'm tired, but somebody else is carrying the ball, so I don't have to feel totally responsible or solely responsible for it. That's what we have. Thank you.
Frank Forleo. Our group was Native Americans at URI. We talked about student numbers, faculty numbers, and staff numbers, and they're all very low. Native Americans are close to invisible in their own land on this campus. We talked about scholarships, which are very small. We talked about facilities for Native people, which are non-existent. We talked about curriculum. There are not very many Native American courses offered on this campus, and there's been a hesitancy to offer them in the past. We talked about the Native American Graves and Repatriation Act. You may know that there are Native American graves on this campus, and there is a special relationship between the university and the local tribe because of that, which leads to the issues of sovereignty. The Narragansett people are a sovereign nation. They are our neighbors, and I stand today on their land. The three items. First of all, to reestablish the Native American advisory here on this campus. We've done it in an ad hoc way, and now we want to turn to our senior associate vice president for her help in making that a formal entity at the university. And toward that end, and to reinforce the historic nature of the relationship with the Narragansett people, we want to call upon Chief Sachem Matthew Thomas to be a member of that commission. And if not, his designate. And last, and maybe the most important of these things, we've always believed, those of us who have been in this battle for many years, that if you really want to change URI, you change the curriculum. Change what students are taught. And toward that end, we want to see more Native American courses offered immediately. Thank you.
I'm Mark Conley from the Department of Music, and the topic that I did this morning was what role can the fine arts play in our diverse community? We were talking about the fact that fine arts, we don't often think of fine arts as a human rights issue, but it's hard to talk about multiculturalism if you're not talking about a people's culture or their art, their music, their dance, their theater, their literature. How do you validate somebody's point of view if you're not discussing that at all? As an example, just because in the United States we don't tend to think of it as a human rights issue, 15 villages in Mozambique have asked me to come this summer to work with them with their choirs so that they can get their own message out in their own way to the larger community, the larger world community. So we were talking about ways we can get the fine arts to play a more central role on this campus in this discussion. And because we'd be at sort of a beginning stage with that, we first came up with hoping that people will validate creating campus-wide involvement among students, faculty, and staff in fine arts. We felt that staff are sometimes marginalized in this discussion as well, and that they have an important role to play. And the second item that we suggested was that we begin by bringing faculty and students and staff in the fine arts area along, together with people from the Women's Center, LGBTQ, community equity and diversity, and all of the involved groups to start talking about ways where we can give wider voice to people on campus. Thank you.
Hello, I had stepped out. I had to run to a meeting, and I just got back. My name is Kevin Martins, and the session I held this morning was the Multicultural Organization's lack of funding. I was a student here, freshman 2003, and I haven't left campus since. And before I got here, and till this day, this has kind of been an issue for multicultural organizations, specifically through Student Senate, which offers plenty of funding for organizations who want to have programs and do a bunch of things. But commonly what we have found is some multicultural organizations don't necessarily fit in the box that is there. And so the process for recognition mandates specific things, and some of these organizations have changed their initial mission or their process altogether to try to conform, and in doing so kind of lost what the sense is of their organization. And so what we saw on campus time and time again is these different departments popped up and said, well, we have some money for diversity funding because, again, time and time again, either the programs or the initiatives that these multicultural organizations are trying to set forth don't fit what's currently there. And so we had a lot of good discussion in the room, and we kind of narrowed it down to the action steps you see on the board over there. One of the central issues has been the recognition process altogether. For example, if a multicultural organization wanted to bring a speaker to campus, well, a bunch of organizations bring speakers to campus. That's not a problem. There's money for that. There's funding all over. But if you are not recognized by Student Senate initially, or you're not co-sponsoring with the Student Senate organization, that money might not necessarily be available to you. So you have to seek alternative means of funding, and you're kind of perpetuating that you go seek funding over there. Over there, there's not really a home. And so we were talking about making sure that there's kind of some equal access, but that we don't trample what's already there. Some of the action steps we have there is consider revising the process to become recognized. For example, 3 meetings, no dues, et cetera, non-exclusionary. Those are some things that the multicultural student organizations have, again, inherent in their mission for a bond or a Pink Women, for example, and that would just preclude them altogether. They would not be able to be recognized by any means because of that alone, so the access to funding is not there. Am I running low on time? Even with glasses on, it makes it hard to see that far. Let me see. Consider creating a multicultural. Okay, so a council to kind of advise students on exactly what keeps them from becoming Student Senate recognized, what in their mission statement is not up to par, what the process is altogether. Because, again, a lot of these multicultural organizations are choosing not to even be Student Senate recognized because of all the hoops that they've had to jump through to change their mission. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Hi, how are you? I'm Erin West from Undergraduate Admissions, and the session that we did this morning was how to support the university. How can the university support recruiting and retaining a more diverse student population? And we had a really great discussion. There were people from all over the university, undergraduate and graduate, represented, and we came up with a couple action plans that we're hoping can be explored here at the university. One issue that we talked about, and I know a lot of departments talk about on campus, is funding. Funding for things like student organizations, funding for scholarships, funding for graduate assistantships, and things like that. And so one of our action plans was to explore and publicize funding abilities, and also teaching the folks here the skills to request external money, grants and things like that. And so we're really hoping that could be something that could be looked at. We also think that there's wonderful things going on here at the university in different departments, academic and student affairs, that are not known about. And so coming up with some way of sharing initiatives, utilizing either technology or events like this to promote dialogues between different departments, between different clubs and organizations, between students, faculty, and staff. We think there's a lot of great models out there that could be replicated as far as mentorship and advising that we need to share with each other, because we sometimes get a little siloed here. We also, speaking of mentorship programs, we think that, utilizing the great talents that we have in graduate and undergraduate students here to help mentor younger students through some of the challenges they might be facing when they come to our community is essential. And I know we're doing a lot of mentorship things here at the university, but finding some way to centralize that and make sure the students that need it are getting mentored, and making sure the students that would be wonderful mentors get the training and the opportunities that they might need. And then lastly, we did talk about expanding recruitment and scholarships for diverse populations, considering, again, I know we've considered this in the past, less emphasis on standardized tests, to be able that the students that are thriving in their high schools can successfully come to the university and have the funding to support them in that endeavor. So that was something that we talked about a lot, funding for graduate students, because that was something that we think is preventing students from attending the university. And I think that is it. Thanks so much.
I wasn't the convener for this particular one, but I did take the notes for the neurodiversity talk this morning. And so in the words of the convener, we were discussing, how everyone's brains are wired differently, and how do we make a much more inclusive learning environment for those students, and how do we make sure that they get the necessary assistance from disability services. And so one of the major items that we talked about was making sure that we're actually not only assessing the campus as a whole, but also in class, how do students learn, what types of learning styles does everyone have, to make sure everyone is getting the best that they can out of their education here. So that was this morning. Thanks.
Those are morning sessions covered. Moving to nope.
Oh, you are here. Come on. I thought you were.
Hi there, I'm Dolores Walters, Director of Recruitment and Retention in the Office of Community Equity and Diversity, and this morning we held a session on recruiting faculty and staff in underrepresented groups to URI. We had a very lively and informative and productive discussion. It's hard to boil them down into 3 areas or 3 points, but I'll try. We talked about expanding our training for the search committees, letting them know that, for example, we have graduates in our graduate programs who might be considered potential faculty candidates. And we wanted to allow the search committees to know that we have some best practices that are already that have already been developed by the Advanced Women's Committee, and those have been underutilized, so we need to get those up and running again. We wanted to expand our efforts with human resources so that, for example, if we had more resources in human resources, we might be able to work with candidates when they need to have their spouses hired when they are candidates for a position. So we need to work on that as well. And number 3, we talked about community outreach, probably utilizing a website. And that website would talk about work-life issues and promote some of the work, again, that the Advanced Committee has done, letting people know the advantages of being in Rhode Island and being at URI to potential candidates. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brianna. I'm a student that's helping out. The convener for our session, Antia Frias, I believe had a class. So I was very impressed with her authenticity and her passion for this topic. She facilitated the discussion very eloquently, so I'll try to do her some justice. She was concerned. Our topic was opportunities for multicultural students to attend URI, in addition to other opportunities outside of talent development. Some of the discussion points that were brought up were reducing the stigma of talent development students. A lot of the students felt that because they're students of color, they're automatically assumed to be in talent development. Some of the students also said that there needs to be a cultural change at the institution because they don't feel it's a very welcoming environment, and sadly a lot of them said that they don't see themselves here, which I thought was a very poignant statement. They also said that it wasn't fair that underrepresented students who are overqualified in terms of GPA and SAT scores wouldn't be able to come to URI because of a lack of financial resources. So some of the action plans that we came up with were guidelines for advisors and staff to have training on how to have these difficult conversations with students and to offer them alternate ways to get through a rigorous academic major if they feel like they haven't had the preparation necessary. Also increasing the marketing for events and programs on campus for underrepresented students, so getting the word out there that we are a welcoming community. Intentional admissions resources and creating ways for underrepresented students to maybe interact with students that are already here. And also an increase in scholarship opportunities for all students that need financial resources, specifically transfer students that may be wanting to come to the institution. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Heather Maselli, and my co-convener was Amy Phelps-Lee. We're both students in the PhD in Education program here. Our session was how to create inclusive pedagogy in classes, and actually that wording is a little off. It's more how to include inclusive pedagogy into classes. And our session was a great mix of both faculty and students. So we actually started our discussion talking about what pedagogy was because the students didn't know what that word meant. And of course, by that we mean teaching practices in the classroom. And so we asked the students what made them feel engaged in their classes, what made them feel welcome. And we came up with a list of a lot of things that talked about creating safe spaces for students to feel welcome to share their experiences, to share their backgrounds, and not feel judged or stigmatized by anybody else in the classroom, and that those experiences would help others understand the concepts in the class a little bit better. We also talked about challenges that faculty have in incorporating these inclusive pedagogies, like the fear of failing if something doesn't work, and the lack of support, and even the lack of knowledge in pedagogy, because most of the faculty on campus are not trained as educators. So we have one major action item, and it's a faculty development program that increases the understanding of inclusive teaching practices in faculty members, and also resources to give those to faculty to learn those skills in inclusive pedagogy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jen. I am speaking on behalf of Jamie Brooks, who convened the session on gender inclusion on campus. We had quite a discussion and came up with a whole mess of action steps. There's 11 of them listed up there. But very quickly, we discussed providing more literature in the health services, offices for students who are undergoing transition, following the Massachusetts new law that they just started, where you are allowed to use the bathroom that aligns with the gender that you feel inside. Providing an on-campus resource for trans students during their transition, both medically and psychologically. Having more healthcare coverage for students going through transition. Requiring all URI 101 classes and then the comparable EGR 105 and all the other first-year intro classes to go through safe zone training. Relabeling bathrooms to just say bathroom instead of having the male or female logo out front. Making sure that all new buildings include a gender-neutral bathroom, marketing the bias response team so that students know that it is available. Interestingly, we had 11 people in our session. 6 did not know that the bias response team existed, and 8 of the 11 didn't know how to access it and to fill out the report online. 2 more things, training the orientation leaders and URI 101 mentors about campus resources and requiring them to go through the safe zone training. And then making the room selection process more inclusive so that trans students do not need to come out to the Department of Housing and Residential Life in order to live with someone that they're most comfortable with.
Hi everyone, I'm Datula Matthews, and I convened a session about being a parent and being married on campus. And we talked about some issues. First, I wanted to say that, is this better? First, I wanted to say that the support that came out was really awesome. I honestly expected no one to be there because most parents on campus come and have to leave and go to work or go pick up their child. But there was actually a lot of staff members that didn't even know we're here, and there were actually students who aren't even parents who came to support this subject. So we talked about issues about where you're going to live. If a student, young or a young freshman, sophomore, junior, that lives on campus becomes pregnant, where are they going to live? Where are they going to go? And they want to continue their education. We also talked about affordable childcare, being left out of the campus culture. I'm not too sure if people noticed, but when you see a student walking with a child on campus, what comes automatically to your mind? Oh, they had a child. Oh, they're probably struggling. Support for transitioning from being just a student to being a student that's a parent. We also talked about being a family-friendly campus. And some of the things that we said that could help us reach resolutions would be data collecting. Maybe if we were more aware of how many students actually become pregnant on campus and leave. Maybe that's a high percentage, and if we address that issue, maybe our retention rate would shrink. We also talked about having organizations or office support, a physical person that someone can go to when they're having these issues and talk to them about that or have some guidance. So now there's an action plan instead of sending them to the Providence campus saying, oh, okay, well, you're going through that. Well, the Providence campus, they're more family friendly, or they can handle those issues more better. There's more flexibility. They can still be on campus. They can still come to the Kingston campus and not have to be sent away or drop out. We also talked about co-op between student and campus. support systems, there was a clothing exchange, there was childcare options, really, really, really good ideas. We also talked about developmental policies with working with faculty and protecting scholarships. It's really hard, and the reason why I brought up this issue is because I was a sophomore and junior when I got pregnant on campus, and I'm not ashamed to say it. But it was a struggle to have to tell a professor, I have to miss this exam because my child is having a fever, and I don't have a note right now because I can't take them to the doctors. We don't have the money right now. And them saying, well, we have to be fair to all the students. That's really difficult. So if there were policies where there's some flexibility built in there, that might be able to help those students dealing with those issues. Maybe you might even have more resolutions. That's it.
Hello, my name is Jermaine Stevens, and the session I held this afternoon was building bridges. And when I say building bridges, that's between all student and faculty, including multicultural orgs, non-multicultural orgs, frats, and sororities, and everyone on the campus. And I had Lugton Omorigbo with me, and Allie Jackson, and I forgot her name, sorry. But where we decided to go was our discussion points was students need to feel included in orgs, which mean like there's no discrimination. Besides some that have like gender and you have to be on a student team or anything like that. But besides that, there should be no discrimination. And the other thing was marketing your frat or sorority and your org to people on campus, so where it's like it's a diverse thing, so it doesn't seem like, okay, this frat is all about, a bunch of white guys who do this, or the frat I'm in, which is Bond, Brothers on a New Direction, is a bunch of black guys, because really people aren't conscious or aware of really where this campus is going as far as diversity. And within that discussion, we concluded that the faculty and staff on this campus failed us as a student body. And in going to say that, we say that because we believe it's the job of the faculty and staff to really promote diversity, and not just diversity, but unity, because diversity is nothing without unity. You can be as diverse as you want to be, but really we need unity on this campus to get to those places where we want to be. And our courses for actions were retreats that engaged all people, like all faculty facilitating it, and students from everywhere, just board members or whatever, just coming together and having a retreat. And I can't even see from here, but another one was I think I seen the president here, he might be in there, but another one was to send him a letter with a collaboration of voices from every student body on campus, frat, sorority, multicultural org, everybody, and to really everyone brand this and put our name on it as a student body to really say, this is what we want when it comes to diversity. This is what we want when it comes to the University of Rhode Island. Because we may say that the university failed us, but at the same time, this is our university. And that goes to say, like the woman said today, it's not them. We shouldn't look at the frat as them. We shouldn't look at Bond as them. We should look at it as who? Us. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chantal Sikos, and I'm a psychologist from the Counseling Center. The topic that we talked about was same-sex marriage in Rhode Island, considerations for students, faculty, and staff. And we had a really good discussion that started around that consideration and being able to have safe spaces where you can really talk about this with peers, with people here on campus, and generational differences when people would try to have those dialogues back home. We also talked more broadly about things like homophobia and came up with a few action steps, one of which is just faculty and college support around being able to attend some of this diversity programming during the day. You know, for commuters who have to go back home to be able to not go to a certain class, to come and have some of these conversations here on campus. Also, a previous university where I worked had something called the Visibility Project. And what that was faculty, staff, and students who felt comfortable could be openly listed as out on a website. And they could share what particular department they were with, if it was a faculty or staff member, and also be able to give like their email address, for example, just to promote a sense of community. So we included that as another action item. And then our third action item was really looking at, we specifically talked about fraternities, sororities, the athletics department, but other on-spot campuses where these dialogues aren't necessarily happening around sexual diversity, and being able to bring in speakers particularly to those organizations and different outreach programming there.
Hello, my name is Tammy Vargas Warner, and along with Barb Silver, we convened the section on retention of faculty and staff from underrepresented groups. And we had a long discussion about following up to the morning session when we talked about recruitment. Now, what can we do as an institution to keep the talent that we have on this campus? And some of the items that we came up with were more funding for dual career needs, more support for work-life issues, and particularly maybe a work-life specialist being hired, developing paths to advancement for faculty and staff who can see themselves here on this campus for a long time, but not necessarily in the same exact position. Also developing a more thoughtful and effective mentoring plan for new faculty and staff members, creating more opportunities for networking and community building, both professionally and socially, and continuing to enhance and improve the climate for multiculturalism and diversity at URI. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that is the overview for our 18 sessions that were posed in the work today. Please join me in applauding our conveners, our attendees for their work today. Thank you for your passion and commitment to engage in the dialogue today. But as we know, the work is not over. And it continues on these sessions for the students who are joining us as part of their class, and for the faculty and staff who release students from their classes or for their work engagement today, and of course to all of the community members, faculty, staff included, who chose to be here today. We now move to looking at how we will gather this wealth of information into a process that makes a little sense for us to go forward, and to make sure that we have included what perhaps has not yet been included, of course, as we go forward in our mission. So our task for the next half an hour or so will be to ask individuals in a moment to come forward and vote, to use your law of mobility to come forward and indicate what you individually feel, if you have not already done so, are your priorities and preferences based on the action items that you saw. Obviously, we'll have to allow others some space to come to the wall and do that. Those who already voted, please wait patiently, and we'll move forward in a moment with some dialogue and discussion around those issues. But we will ask that, again, folks use their adhesive markers to indicate as close as possible to those action items. Again, putting one of your items. They cannot be on all of the same items, so spread them out a little bit if you wish. You may mark them on 6 different items or spread them out as you see fit. But we will ask you to do that, and then I will ask you to come back together in your seats for those who are staying for our wrap-up sessions to dialogue and talk about action steps of moving forward on these identified priorities. Feel free to show us your priorities on these items. Okay, ladies and gentlemen who are here with us, still in the process, through the work of our graduate students and college student personnel, they have been working diligently to get some counts on our priorities, and it looks like many of those items have come forward as key elements, and I'll ask that you return forward to engage in some dialogue. So come closer if you wish, and I will open the microphone in a moment to some responses of questions if you'd like to share it with this smaller group going forward as we wrap up our time together today. What I will state from my knowledge of the process is that, well, a few key priorities have obviously been identified. It does not in any way diminish the other conversations that occurred, and this work will continue. I mentioned that to a colleague in a room. Those of us with passion and responsibility for these issues will work on them no matter what. We will keep up that dialogue and conversation, but obviously there are many of you who share interest in a few key issues that are presented. And you will note that they are highlighted on the wall, from issues of neurodiversity, Native Americans at URI. What role can, I'm trying to take the fine arts play in our diverse community? Looking at issues of multicultural student organization funding. How to support the university to recruit and retain students, multicultural students. I'm assuming that's the perspective on there. Also looking at the issues of young and mature parents as undergraduates and graduate students at the university. Looking ahead to opportunities for multicultural students to, can someone highlight that one for me? Is that to attend URI, to be recruited and retained. That was some of the finance discussion that occurred as well, supporting that. Looking at building bridges, and as the student representative talked about earlier, that was about creating a community building action planning retreat around that topic for faculty, staff, and students. Looking at gender inclusion on campus, and continuing for looking at retention of underrepresented faculty and staff at the university, as well as, I'm the second to last session, I cannot see from a distance. Will you tell me what it is? Same-sex marriage discussions at URI for impacting students, faculty, and staff. So once again, we have come together and detailed some pretty amazing topics and contact. I'm looking at the action item. What is that, Anne-Marie? The faculty development program as well. I want to make sure that's highlighted also. What we will ask you to do, those of you who are here and remaining in the room for a few minutes, is first to agree to identify that you are interested and invested and wish to follow up on these particular issues that are highlighted to my left. So we're going to ask folks to take that responsibility to come forward and sign up your name and email and contact information before you leave this open space today, to ensure that we can continue this dialogue, as well as hear about some key opportunities to continue to engage before we leave. In addition, I'm happy to pose the questions that are listed behind me if anyone needs to say some closing words, because we will work to close our circle for today, and only for today, on these issues as we move forward. So I invite you all for the next 5 minutes at most to move to the location on my left and sign up if you wish for the issues that are highlighted, to receive more information, to be invited to further discussions. And of course, you will all receive the information and invitation that is on the website highlighting all of these action items. So if you will please move to the left and indicate a further desire to discuss these topics that are listed as priorities, please do so, and we'll come back into dialogue. The sign-ups will move towards students in Dr. Anne-Marie Vaccaro's class. The graduate students who assisted in convening sessions will forward those issues and ensure that people know about upcoming meetings, as well as a May 2nd event that you'll hear more in a moment. Okay, let's call folks to gather back together for our wrap-up. Again, if you can join me as close as possible so folks can hear as we close with our small group now. Thank you so much for choosing to indicate a follow-up interest. Please know you will get an email, and we will ask you once again if you're interested in continuing either serving more permanently on a subcommittee or just continuing to be engaged and to know what opportunities are before you. So thank you for indicating an interest, and you'll get some additional information for follow-up. I just wanted to pose the questions that are behind me as we close our circle. We have opened our space, and it is time to begin to think about closing that circle for today's work, and ask for individuals, if they wish, to have a moment, 2 or 3 minutes, to share their thoughts on the questions before you and or other topics of what remains to be said. And I'll open the floor for a couple minutes if anyone wishes to come forward.
Okay, first and foremost, this has been a great opportunity, I think, for everyone. First of all, it not only gets us to get up and out and meeting different people that we haven't seen. We may, speak to people on the phone or email or so forth, but a nice face-to-face is always great every now and then. Also, it gets us to thinking out of the box as far as what we need to do, what we're doing now, what we need to do, and what work is left to be done. So I think that's a great opportunity. I always like, having a forum to share ideas with different people and get different perspectives on, on what they think and so forth. And also, for people who are not necessarily or don't necessarily feel that they're encouraged, or that don't really feel that they have the right to be in a forum like this, and to feel encouraged to do so and be empowered to take part. That's also a very important thing as well. There are some folks that are just basically tied to their desks and seem to be tied to their desks and don't feel that they really belong in a forum like this. And to be able to take part is really a great opportunity. And I think we've come up with several wonderful ideas of things to be thinking about and to be working on. And it's been a great opportunity, and I thank you for letting me be a part of it. Thank you.
Since I'm the shortest person in the room. In the sessions I went to today, students took a really impressive leadership role and demonstrated a remarkable depth and breadth of knowledge on this subject, and it was a wonderful thing to see.
Following our rules of engagement for the day, I pose our quote that many of you saw when you were invited to attend as thoughts for our continued call for action in my portion of the day of being a part of providing this open space closes, but I return the floor to our individuals who will be leading us in the charge from community equity and diversity as we close to tell us about what is next. So on behalf of those who like structure in the room, as many of you heard me say in the morning, thank you for engaging in what is a different process, but one that I hope that you will find is invigorating, exhilarating, productive, and lets those of us with passion and responsibility combine into action. So thank you for today.
All right, just a couple of things. Oh, I'm not the shortest person in the room. Okay. Just a couple of things as we wrap up for the day. Just wanted to mention, and you saw these little slips of paper on your tables, that we do have an evaluation for the day and would love to get your feedback on your experience during the day. What can we do differently? As a couple of folks have already mentioned, this might be an annual event, as it looks. And so we would love to get your feedback as we move forward to try and do some things in the future. We also had a lot of folks who made this happen today, and we've already done a lot of thank yous, but want to make sure that we do that again, because we really, none of the folks individually on the committee could have made this happen on their own. And so all of the support and help from all the people that you see listed on our thank yous is much appreciated for everyone who took part. In addition, we want to mention something that we think is a really unique opportunity and follow-up to our day that we've spent together today. And so we'd like you to mark down this date on May 2nd, which is one of our reading days. From noon to 2 p.m., we will be offering a follow-up to this conversation. So we will be in the pharmacy building in room 170 on that day from noon to 2. The students in Anne-Marie Vaccaro's class will join with the folks that have signed up to be a part of these teams and start the good work of the day. And then on May 2nd, you all will have an opportunity to come and hear where we're at, where we want to go with that, and what we need help with in moving forward on all of these initiatives. You can also look forward that day to receiving an initial sort of look at the findings from our campus climate survey that we hope to launch in about a month. So would really invite you to come to that event, make sure that you're present so you can hear the report out and learn about what good work is being done. We do have the president on his way to the room, and so if he does walk in while we're doing a closing, we would have him say a few words. But if folks are staying afterwards, please know that the president's on his way to spend some time with us, and he will be here in just a moment. As I bring up Annie Kosar and Naomi Thompson to offer our closing words for the day, I want to remind folks that we have t-shirts available. So if you have not yet picked up your t-shirt for the day, please. Oh, we're done. We're done. Oh, wear them on May 2nd. I missed that. Sorry, I wasn't getting it. I'm there. So May 2nd, wear your t-shirt to that event. Thank you, Katrina.
So I would just love to say thank you so much. I honestly can always talk, but I would say I'm almost at a loss for words in how moved I've been today by the fact that all of you are here, by the fact that all of you have given of your time, by the fact that we've had so many people involved, and that it has really instilled in me the belief that I had before I came to URI and the belief that I continue to hold as I am at URI and a part of the URI community, which is that we hold community, equity, diversity, and inclusion as values, as an important piece of who we are. So thank you so, so much for giving of your time, and I really hope to see you all on May 2nd. And I will now turn it over to Naomi.
Well, I thank you all for staying, for being the diehards, for studying the course, and being a part of this oh so important conversation that we have had today. And I just hope that we continue, that this is a beginning of a new conversation about transforming the University of Rhode Island to becoming a more welcoming and inclusive and diverse place, and a place where we can understand and embrace those differences. You've given us in community equity and diversity, a lot to think about and a lot to work on. But this is not just the work of 4 units and 18 to 20 people, but this is the work of the entire URI community. So I thank you for coming out. Thank you for staying to the very, very end. We were trying to drag it out until the president came, but it's not looking like he's going to show up in time. But I appreciate all of your contributions and lending your voice. Thank you.